Welcome to the breakdown where we break down all the messed up shit. And today, we look into one of the most requested films from you guys, Mysterious Skin, directed by Greg Araki, based on the book by Scott Heim. I remember seeing someone read this in middle school. Mysterious Skin follows the lives of two young men, Brian and Neil, as they struggle to make sense of their childhood, which slowly unravel as they confront the trauma and the secrets they've carried with them for years. This movie has been praised for showing how sex abuse affects people in the long term, and it was not an easy watch. It's tough to cover on YouTube because of the topics, so try to bear with me. Here's your content warning. Please only watch this if you feel like it. Also, there are youngling actors, but I can assure you they were not exposed to anything too graphic during filming. It reminds me of movies like Ken Park, Kids, and even Requiem for a Dream. We're gonna recap and review the film and rate just how disturbing it is on the disturbance meter. One last thing. If you guys are interested, a YouTuber named Fright Delight interviewed me and I had a blast. So if you want to learn more about me, check it out. The link is in the description. The best way to watch this film is by renting it on Amazon, but otherwise, you want to see what happens, including all the messed up parts, stay tuned for the breakdown. Cue the Gohan. The atmospheric music moves me, makes me feel like I'm entering a dream or a nightmare. Here is Brian Lackey, who remembers everything except one scary day. In the summer of 1981, he lost 5 hours of his life, remembering sitting at his Little League game and suddenly woken up by his dork sister with a bleeding nose. He doesn't remember anything, but sure looks terrified, and his busy mother thinks Little League is to blame. Brian quits baseball, but continues to be haunted by nightmares, nosebleeds, and blackouts. What exactly happened in those 5 missing hours? Now that's Brian, but here's Neil McLovin. Neil McCormick, sorry.
Summer I was 8 years old, I came for the first time.
All right, Neil, no thanks. Neil here watches his mother have a naughty time with her boyfriend. There are bedrooms for a reason, Mom. But Neil is attracted to him, and guys like him. Neil joined Little League just like Brian and finds himself attracted to his new coach. Neil's got the skills to put Shohei Ohtani to the test, all to impress the coach, who invites Neil out to watch a movie with the rest of the team. Except when he arrives, it's just him. The two watch a horror movie and play games at the coach's house. Oddly, he records Neil and takes pictures of him. This is exactly what those 90s sitcoms warned us about. Sometime later, the coach takes Neil back to his house, showing him all the weirdo pictures he took of him. Damn, the coach went to Sam's Club. The coach tells Neil he likes him, laying him on the cereal-covered floor, and I'm sure you can tell what he does next. The coach tells Neil it's okay if he likes it after. This whole section is creepy. The childlike ambiance juxtaposed with these evil actions. How oblivious Neil is and how horrible these acts are. I'd give this 8 points on the disturbance meter for how emotionally jarring it is. 2 years later, on the best holiday ever, Neil and Brian share an awkward stare. They aren't friends like Neil is with his older friend Wendy. These two are like platonic soulmates, spending Halloween pulling tricks without the treats. Neil is a bully, more menace than Dennis, forcing this kid to endure fireworks. To make him feel better, just listen.
When I was little, a man used to do this to me, and you're really gonna like it.
That's horrible. Neil essays this boy right in front of his shocked friend. Already we see how terrible the coach's actions are, and it's just 20 minutes in. That's 5 points on the disturbance meter. Just 4 years later, Neil had a super growth spurt. At 15 years old, he begins to sell his body, meeting his first client, Charlie. Scary how the least people you expect try to mess around with teenagers. 2 points on the disturbance meter. Neil shows his friend Wendy his advertisement and seems proud of getting money and exploring himself. The atmosphere of this movie reminds me of Requiem for a Dream. Feels so dreamy. In 1991, both Neil and Brian turn 18. And Brian's mom should have been in Dutch Vanderland's gang. Brian is addicted to alien abductions, figuring it's what happened to him in those missing 5 hours. And mom barely believes this fake unsolved mysteries they watch. But the homegirl Wendy, she's leaving Kansas to go to the Big Apple. And Neil is just straight chaos. It's hilarious. Still, he's selling his body. Despite his friend Eric here crushing on him, Wendy warns him to drop the crush, saying that where normal people have a heart, Neil has a bottomless black hole. Wait, your mom, she dated Karate Kid and nursed Homelander. What a lady. Meanwhile, Brian meets the lady on TV who got abducted 50 times, right in the bowels of Kansas. Her name's Evelyn, and here's her dad who treats Brian like he's Jeffrey Dahmer. She honestly sounds like an escaped Arkham Asylum patient, but maybe she really did get abducted. And all the while, Neil says goodbye to Wendy, who's headed out to New York. She regrets leaving Neil alone, contrasted with the connection Brian gains with Evelyn, reading to her his dreams that describe his abduction. However, he mentions another boy in the dream that was with him. That other boy could help him find the answers. After a drunk workday, Neil and Eric arrive home, but once Neil falls asleep, Eric discovers the horrible truth. Seeing pictures the coach took of Neil and listening to a recording of Neil being inappropriately touched. The fact that the coach recorded this and Neil has it seems to show that Neil doesn't see what was wrong with that relationship. A sad situation that makes it all worse. 5 points on the disturbance meter. Oh, and looky here, Brian finds the same Little League picture and finds the boy who was also in his dreams, Neil. The same Neil who is so sick of
this stinky little butt crack of a town!
New York's on the horizon. And then Evelyn shows Brian a deer carcass, saying aliens experimented on it. Touching the deer causes Brian to regain memories, but not of aliens. Rather, a man's touch, and a boy that looks like Neil saying, "Tell him you like it." He passes out, and seems like this alien side quest is coming to a close. Neil is finally on the way to New York, but learns he's got crabs, and I ain't talking crusty. Brian shows up right when Neil leaves. Talk about timing. Over 3 weeks, Brian befriends Eric, soon telling him that he and Neil were abducted by aliens. I even like how the postcard Eric writes the update on has alien images. This next part is crazy, but I predicted it as soon as Brian met Evelyn. You can tell she's itching for connection. She shows up at his house. It tries to show Brian that she's the throat goat, but when she says it'll feel good, he kicks her ass out. Somebody said that to him during those missing 5 hours. Meanwhile, with Neil, he's still selling his body in New York. Wendy warns him to be careful around these New York clients, like this guy, Green Goblin ass. This client is sick with the 4-letter word that YouTube will hate for me to say for some stupid reason. Just meeting him scars Neil, who is ready to stop selling himself and begins to confront what happened to him by his coach, yet he believes it was true love. But let's all thank Wendy. She found Batman Jr. a job, working with a whole different set of 6 inches. Now today in Kansas, it was Brian's birthday. Celebrations with Eric get him drunk, and when his divorced father shows up, Brian screams at him to tell him what happened to him that night. But just like before, Dad is no help. After work one night, Neil falls into old habits, but this client is very aggressive, verbally and physically harming him. Neil has to escape into the bathroom. The client breaks in and viciously essays Neil. It was rough to watch. He wakes up outside and rides the train home bruised and bloodied. This was the harshest scene in the movie, and it's something I didn't expect. He sits in the corner of his bathroom and cries. 11 on the disturbance meter. Soon it's Christmas Eve, the day Neil returns home, and the day Brian was waiting for. Mom tells both friends that Neil got mugged. But finally, These two meet after 10 years. They both mention they have a lot in common, and Neil leads them to the house where it all began, the coach's old house. He doesn't live here anymore, but they break into the empty house and ponder if the coach is dead or alive. Neil felt honored when he was chosen by the coach, and Brian finally regains his memories. That night at the Little League game, he was left alone with no ride when the game was canceled early. Neil and the coach offered to drive him home, yet the coach brought Brian and Neil home with him. The worst parts happened in this room. Neil would help the coach manipulate other boys, not just Brian. Neil goes into detail about what happened that night. It's really explicit hearing the acts that happened to these boys. I'm scared to even mention it. Hearing Neil describe so many acts that they both did in those 5 hours. Hearing these acts described and what the coach made them do. 9 points on the disturbance meter. The reason Brian's nose bled was because he fainted. He trembles in Neil's arms, imagining the horrors that ate him whole. They sat there together, both wishing for a way to go back and undo the past. The movie ends as they both struggle with the horrors of the past and the uncertainty of the future. And that's enough. This movie is over 1 hour and 40 minutes. Love it when they aren't too long. Pulling in $2.1 million at the box office for a movie rated NC-17, that must be good. It earns a 40 out of 60 on the disturbance meter. Definitely emotionally disturbing. Not everything needs to be a gore fest. Let me know what you rated in the comments below. I didn't read the book, but I bet this is still a good adaptation that holds its own weight. It's saddening to see just how quickly your life can turn upside down. The only hope is that they can find some way out of the void that surrounds them. The ending reminds me of Requiem for a Dream, but this is more bittersweet than the outright bad ending that was that movie. I felt a glimmer of hope, a reflection of resilience. I also enjoyed the camera work for this film. Very intimate and immersive. It helps you connect with the characters even more. I feel like I know these guys now, and you clearly feel the courage it takes to reach the ending we see. Most disturbing moment is the SA scene near the end. That's another wound towards a tortured soul. Not too graphic, but still something you turn away from visually. And it is one of the scenes that'll stick with you after a while. Most enjoyed moment was the meeting between Neil and Brian and their trip down memory lane. The only horrible part is there were no good memories, but it's good to confront the horrors that imprisoned them for so long. Like movies that were adapted from books, check out Confessions, a movie where a teacher gets revenge against 2 students who took her daughter, a classic. Then there's The Road, a movie where a father-son duo dodge bloodthirsty gangs and hunger amid the world turning upside down. If you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe to see more Spooky Rice. Thanks for watching. Spooky out.